Hello, this is Balloons, and I'm here to give you a video walkthrough of ISO testing. We're going to utilize a tool called TestDrive and virtual machine using VirtualBox to test an ISO only using your PC in front of you, and we don't need any external media or any external systems in order to do this. So as you can see, I have the Ubuntu wiki page for the ISO walkthrough in front of me. This is a great reference for you if you want to replicate what you see in the video. So let's just go through this together. So first things first, we've listed a couple of requirements at the top. I've already done these installations. If you need to, you can install VirtualBox and TestDrive using the sudo apt-get install commands there. No big deal. Finally, you need a Launchpad or Ubuntu SSO account, and there's a sign-up link if you need one of those. So, let's go ahead and open up the ISO tracker, which I will do. As you can see, the ISO tracker basically lists the currently tested milestones, and there's not a whole lot else going on until we log in. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay, let's go back to the tutorial. So the next step is actually finding a test case to work on. So in the walkthrough, we are going to be testing the i386 build of the Ubuntu desktop ISO. So let's go ahead and follow how to find the test case for the Ubuntu 386 ISO. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose the development release, which at this time is Quantal. You can see that there's already been 3 alphas, and I'm going to take the daily release of the ISO. Alright, so this lists all of the products available to be tested. You can see on the left there's actually a filters box. I've toggled some filters. You can see by clicking and unclicking that Edge Ubuntu is showing up or disappearing. But let's scroll down. You can see here's Ubuntu, and now I've found Ubuntu Desktop i386. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And now here are the test cases for Ubuntu Desktop i386. Let's go back to the walkthrough real quick. Okay, so we've reached the page, as I said, that lists the test cases for the ISOs, for the ISO that we selected. The other important thing to note about the page is the link to the download information and the bug reporting instructions. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. You can see for this ISO, we have an HTTP link, an rsync link, a zsync link, which is what the TestDrive tool actually uses, which I'll show you in a second. And then we have the GPG and MD5 signatures and checksums. So if you were to manually download this and you wanted to test over a cycle, it's much easier as far as time and bandwidth saving to not directly download each image, but instead to utilize rsync or zsync to only download the changes between the images as they're released between milestones, albeit a daily milestone or a release milestone like an alpha or a beta. So let's go ahead and go back. The second link available here is a link to bug reporting instructions. So depending on the ISO or the product that you're testing, sometimes the bug reporting instructions could be a little different. For most of ISO testing, we're going to be filing a bug against Ubiquiti or the Debian installer, depending on which installer we're using. And the preferred method of filing a bug is to actually run Ubuntu bug. Makes it very easy and straightforward from inside the test installation itself, whether that's in a VM or on a physical machine. That's the preferred way to do it. By doing that, we get extra logging information and other information about the machine that encountered the problem, and it makes it easier to track the bug and ultimately fix it. If that doesn't work, you can always file a bug using these handy links that are inside here for Ubiquiti or for Casper. Okay, so let's go on to the next step. So this mentions again that we're going to utilize TestDrive to download the ISO, which I have up here on my right, so I don't need to worry about that, manually downloading it. And the second piece is actually selecting a test case. So there's a lot of test cases on here. The one that we'll be going through is perhaps the simplest one, which is just the install entire disk. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and it's going to bring up a test case for me. Okay, so let's go back. So now it wants us to go ahead and obtain the ISO. So I've already started up TestDrive, and I've got it available here on my right. So I've got the Ubuntu ISOs listed here for desktop, alternate DVD server, all that good stuff. You can see here's the i386 Ubuntu desktop. So in order to download this, I simply check the box, and then I click sync, and then it will begin its download. And you can see I've actually already synced this for today, so it's good to go. 2012 7/30, which is today's date. Okay, so we've gotten that far. Let's go back to the test case now, because we can now execute the test case since we have our ISO all synced up and ready to go. Okay, so first things first, it wants us to boot up. So now, in order to utilize TestDrive and VirtualBox, I click the launch button. Okay, so while the virtual machine is launching, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about TestDrive and where you can find more information about it. So you notice there's a link on the walkthrough to a wiki page for TestDrive. This shows you a little bit more about how you can install it from the Software Center or from the command line. You can run TestDrive from the command line, as it shows here, or as we're doing, you can run it from within GNOME. So once again, it gives you the instructions. First, you sync the ISO by selecting it and hitting the sync button, and that utilizes ZSync in the background to go ahead and update your ISO. Next, in order to run it, as we did, just checking the box and hitting launch. And as we talked about, it configures a virtual machine, sets up the ISO as the installer image to boot from, and then launches the virtual machine for you. So it's really handy. And let's go ahead and take a look real quick while it's still booting up. You can see inside TestDrive there's a few preferences, some things that you might want to be aware of or might want to know about. It has an ISO cache where it actually keeps all the images. So if you don't have a ton of space on your machine, or you're wondering what happened, you can come in here and clean those out, and it will clean out the images that you have downloaded. You can see I have quite a few images cached to various dates and time on my list. You can choose your virtualization. If you don't want to use VirtualBox, there are other options available to you. You can choose the disk and memory size as well. And finally, you can choose which flavors you want to see inside of the tool. Okay, so it looks like we're all booted up. I'm going to go ahead and close this page out. We can go ahead and start on the test case now. Okay, so the system is booted up properly and loaded the installer, so we can go ahead and click the Install Ubuntu button. And now we're on to step 2. We should see the Preparing to Install Ubuntu screen is displayed in just a moment. Okay, and on this screen we have a couple options that we need to verify. The first is that the system has at least the amount of space indicated, and we have a green checkbox to indicate that yes, we do have at least 4.8. Okay, and on this screen we have a couple options that we need to verify. The first is that the system has at least the amount of space indicated, and we have a green checkbox to indicate that yes, we do have at least 4.8 gigs available. The second is it plugged into a power source. Since this is a virtual machine, we don't need to worry about that, and that's correct. And then finally, is it connected to the internet? And we also have a green checkbox. And our expected result is that all these check marks represent the state of our system accurately, and that's correct. So with that, we can move on to step number 4, to click on the continue button. Okay. And as we can see, the installation type screen is displayed. So step 5 says we need to note the state of the check erase disk and install radio button, and that it should be checked. And if it's checked, we can go ahead and click on the continue button, which it is. Okay, so step 6, the expected result should be that the erase disk and install Ubuntu is displayed, and as we can see, it is displayed. Step 7, we are to verify the drive selected on the select drive list corresponds to the drive in the chart, and that's correct. We're seeing /dev SDA, and we also see that step 8, that the entire disk is going to be utilized for the installation. If there was another OS on the disk or something else on the disk, we would see multiple partitions available there. But since we don't, everything looks good. Finally, step 9 is to click on the Install Now button. And our expected result for this is that we should see the Where Are You screen displayed. Now on this screen, we are being asked to check the time zone, and the city is in our time zone area. So in this case, I am in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, and New York is a city in my time zone. So step 10, and the expected result looks good. Now step 11 wants us to go ahead and select a different time zone on the map. So I'm going to go ahead and select Madrid, and the expected result for that is that we should see the corresponding city and time zone field should be updated to say Madrid. And then step 12 is asking us to re-enter the name of a city from our time zone. So I'm going to enter in New York, and I should see an input field and drop down list appear that matches New York, and I do. And then finally, I can check and make sure that the selected time for New York and time zone information on the map is updated, and they are, and that's correct. So step 14, we can click on the continue button, and we see that the keyboard layout screen appears. So let's move on to step 15. So we should note the keyboard layout invariant, and it wants us to type some test characters in the test area. So I'm going to go ahead and type in some test characters, and then I will note that if the keyboard layout invariant that have been selected from my time zone information are correct or not. Okay, so English US and English US is my proper keyboard layout invariant, and the characters all appeared correctly. So step 16, we're going to go ahead and click on the Detect Keyboard Layout button, and we're going to answer the questions asked. And the expected result for this is that our proposed keyboard should correspond to my actual keyboard. So we should see the result come back as English US, English US. And we can see that the proposed keyboard layout of English US, English US is correct. So we can hit continue, and the Who Are You screen does appear. So step 18, it's asking us to input our initial user details and password, and our expected result for this should be that our name, username, and password is accepted, and the continue button should be enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and enter Steve, and it'll fill in my computer's name for me, and then I'll choose a password. Since it did not tell me to change any options for the login automatically or require my password to log in or encrypt my home folder, I'm going to leave those alone. Okay, and you can see that we've got green check marks for all the information I entered. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the continue button, and we should see the welcome to Ubuntu slide displayed. Step 20, it wants us to wait for the installation to proceed and for the slide to change automatically. So we'll just wait a moment and allow that to happen. Step 21, we see that we're also asked to manually test that the left and right arrow buttons work properly. And again, our expected result is that the slide should change. So while we wait for the slide to automatically change, let's just look at the final remaining test cases. So steps 22 through 25 are simply allowing the installer to finish, making sure that there's a prompt for the install media to be removed, and then allowing the system to reboot. Step 26 through 34 is our post-installation tests. The post-installation tests verify our installation by checking for things like the release version, the architecture, the partition information, checking to make sure we can update our packages and install new packages, as well as do basic things like have internet connectivity, browse, and visit a website, and checking our time and date and locale settings. Okay, so we can see that the installer did move forward automatically, and that we can click the arrows left and right, and we proceed back and forth. Okay, and so now the installation dialog is completely finished, step 22, and our expected result that the installation complete dialog has appeared has happened. So now we're able to move on to step 23 and click the restart now button. And what should happen is the GUI should shut down. We'll get a prompt to remove media, which is not applicable in our case since we are using a virtual machine. We'll press enter, and the machine should reboot. The expected result for step 25, allowing the machine to reboot, is that we should reboot into a fully installed Ubuntu system, and we should be all ready to log in for step 26. Okay, so the system is rebooting now, and so we'll wait for the desktop to come up. Okay, so the system has loaded, and I'm going to go ahead and utilize my username and password to log in. And we should see our desktop presented to us. Okay, so let's go ahead and open a terminal window and type in lsb release-rd, and the result should match both the description and the release for the version of Ubuntu that we installed. So as we can see here, I did utilize Ubuntu Quantal, which is the current development version, and that is release 12.10. Next, let's go ahead and execute Arch and verify that the result correctly lists the architecture of the installation that we installed. In this case, since we utilize the i386, we're going to want to see an i386, 486, 586, or 686 result. I'm actually on a 686 machine, and as we can see, a result has occurred. If you were using 64-bit, you would see x86_64 as noted. Looks like we actually have encountered a problem now, a bug. Let's leave that for a moment and go ahead and type in our sudo sfdisk-l and verify the partition scheme. We'll actually come back to the bug report in a moment. And as you can see, the entire disk was utilized just for Linux and formatted properly, and you can see at the end there was a Linux swap partition created just for our Ubuntu installation. So if we take a look at the details for the bug report, you can see that this looks like a system service has crashed, and what we can do is go ahead and report this, and when we go to submit our result, we'll actually take note of the bug number that we report. and we can utilize that as part of the submission process. Even though it didn't prevent us from installing, it's still a bug that we encountered as part of this installation testing. So let's go ahead and click on continue, and Aport will gather up some information, and then we should see a web browser launch, in this case Firefox, and we should be able to log in with our Ubuntu SSO account information and go ahead and file the bug. And Aport will automatically collect the information about the crash and about the system that we're using for us and submit it to Launchpad with our bug report. In the meantime, let's go ahead and enter the last command, or excuse me, execute step 30, and check our apps repository to make sure that all of our package mirrors can be found and updated properly and will happen without error. Okay, so Aport has now launched our web browser instance, so I'm going to go ahead and enter my Ubuntu SSO information and log in. After we log in, Aport will actually suggest a title for us, and it will tell us that it's adding the extra information that it collected to our bug report. And if I click next, I'll just go with the summary that's been provided there. And as you can see, a duplicate was actually found, and if we take a look, we can see that indeed this does match exactly. So we can go ahead and click yes. This is the bug I'm trying to report, and we have the option of adding ourselves to the bug report or just marking ourselves as being affected by it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe myself to the bug report as well as marking myself as being affected by it. Okay, so let's do the step 31 and launch Update Manager. And as we can see for Quantal, this is being renamed to Software Updater. And check and make sure that we can install any updates that are found and that they are downloaded and installed without error. Okay, and while that's updating, I'm going to go ahead and launch Firefox, and I will execute step 32 to navigate to ubuntu.com and load the Ubuntu homepage. And we'll make sure that our web browsing is working properly, and then we can connect to the internet and we have basic connectivity. And it looks like ubuntu.com loaded just fine, so we're all set there. So we can go ahead and move on to step 33 and launch our time and date settings menu. And in this step, we want to note that the time zone information, the local date and time, all those things match what we actually selected during installation. In this case, I utilized Eastern Time Zone, and you can see today's date on my main machine, and you can see the times. So we want to see and make sure that the date matches, and it does, and that the times match, and that the location is set. And it looks like everything matches. So the expected result passes. And then finally, step 34, if we installed a non-English version of Ubuntu, we are to note the language used on the desktop. In this case, I used English, so we're set on that step, and you can see that the desktop is rendered in English. And it looks like our step 31 expected result also completed successfully, installing all of the updates, and now it looks like it wants to restart to finish the update installation, but it completed without error. So let's look at preparing to submit a result. Now you can see that the submission page actually contains a bugs list of previously encountered bugs, and you'll find if you hover over the bugs, they'll display some summary information about what that bug entailed in the past. And so you can utilize that to see if you might need to report a duplicate of a bug, saving you the time and effort of re-reporting the bug. Now in our case, we actually need to submit a pass result since the test case finished successfully. And you can see a couple examples here of a failure with some bugs and a pass submission, in this case with no bugs. But since we closed the browser window there with the duplicate, let's go ahead and relaunch Firefox on the virtual machine and see what bug number that bug that we reported was, so that we can note it on our submission. And it looks like it was bug 1026520. So we've gone ahead and entered that in to our bug list, and we're going to go ahead and submit result. Now the final piece for this walkthrough is to go ahead and check and make sure that the result that we submitted actually appears in the list for this test case for this build of this ISO. So if we take a look, we can see that it shows me my name, it has the update date and time, and it shows that I reported one bug, although the bug information is not yet available for the summary information. If I click on the link, I'll still be taken to Launchpad.